Hello everybody, this is the Mushroom Wizard, and once again I'm bringing to you a presentation concerning mushroom picking in Saskatchewan. This one will be dealing with the Inky Cap species of Saskatchewan. So let's just get right down to it. So the genre that we're going to be looking at are Coprinellus, Coprinopsis, and Coprinus. Now there was a time when these all fell under a single genus, the Coprinus genus. And in recent decades, with genetic analysis, it's become clear that they are actually not very closely related to each other at all, these different species. And as a result, some of them are now in Coprinellus, some are in Coprinopsis, and some remain in Coprinus. What are Inky Caps? Inky Caps are agaric mushrooms that deliquesce. So agaric, if you remember, is a structure of mushroom that has a stipe going up, a cap on top, and then gills underneath that cap. The very basic mushroom structure that we all think of when we think of mushrooms. Deliquesce is where gills, instead of spreading their spores in the normal manner, like into the air or just dropping them down, actually go through a process of autodigestion. They consume themselves and disintegrate into a black inky goo, which drops down and then gets washed away by groundwater or rainwater and spread around in that manner. And this usually occurs very quickly. These mushrooms may contain coprine, which is a toxin, but not all of them do. It was believed once upon a time that anything in the Coprinus genus contained this toxin. In fact, all of the mushrooms that contained the toxin were split apart into Coprinopsis. So Coprinellus and Coprinus, those genera do not contain this toxin. Now, this is not a dangerous toxin that we're talking about. This is a toxin that combines with alcohol. So if you're somebody who drinks alcohol, has several drinks a week, this might not be a mushroom you're interested in if it contains coprine. And the symptoms of coprine poisoning, and it's hard to even call it that, it's basically flushing, a lot of sweating, your mouth watering, headaches, and kind of a general feeling of unease, I guess. You're just very uncomfortable. So it'll ruin your night, but it's not going to kill you. And this occurs if you have been drinking alcohol within 48 hours of consuming a mushroom with this toxin. And that's, say, 48 hours before or after, right? So be cognizant of that. These mushrooms have a very short shelf life due to the deliquescence as well. So when I say short, I mean short. So with some of them, if you pick them in the morning and you're planning to go mushroom picking for 6 hours, by the time you get home, they could already be melting. And we'll talk a bit more about that when we get to different edibility sections. So we'll just start in with the species here. First and foremost, everybody knows the Shaggy Mane. This is one of the best known of the wild edible mushrooms in the world. It's also one of the best tasting. This is Coprinus comatus. It is a cosmopolitan species and found basically throughout the world. So these are off-white, quickly tanning with age and turning black with deliquescence. So you can see on the left-hand side that mushroom, it's still closed. It hasn't even opened up yet. You can already see the browning there at the margin of the cap. These are ovoid in shape, and that's pretty self-explanatory. They're an oval going upwards. They expand very quickly. So when they're ready to go, and they open up almost like an umbrella over the course of several hours even. And they flatten out as they reach deliquescence, at which point they basically melt. They are covered with shaggy raised scales, with the largest often found sitting on the top, kind of like a cap. This has led to the common name of lawyer's wig. I don't know where that name is common to. I've never used it. I've never heard anybody use it, but it's in all the books apparently. So I'm just going to call it a Shaggy Mane. The margin is enrolled. You can see it there. It is striate at maturity. So when it's coming out and it begins to liquefy and the cap begins to become very thin, it becomes striate. And these are up to 6 inches high and 2 inches wide, so quite large. Good sized caps. There you can see some size references for you. Looks like somebody on the left was cutting those, so it would usually have a much longer stipe. Now these gills are white, but you'll never see them white unless you pick a brand new one just as it's emerging and cut it in half right away. Because by the time it opens up enough to see anything, they'll be pink bordering into dark brown. And then of course black as they deliquesce and turn to liquid. They are free from the stipe itself. They are very crowded, as you can see. And they are concealed by the cap and a partial veil until the deliquescence begins. And they have a black spore print, hence the black goo at the end of it. So these are the stipes here that we're talking about. These are off-white in color, cylindrical or bulbous. So you can see what we're seeing here is cylindrical. Later on we'll see a bulbous one. They have a central attachment to the cap up top. They are smooth at times, other times they have this kind of raised scales, very similar to what you're seeing on the cap. And they are hollow. And inside of each stipe, in this hollow space, there is a set of fibers running down, almost like strings. And I'll show you that in a second here too. And then these are up to 8 inches high and 1 inch wide. So again, fairly large stipes for a fairly large mushroom. Here's a bisection, and you can see that this is a bulbous stipe with a bulb at the end there, and it is hollow, and in the middle you can see those little strings running down. Their purpose, I know not. And here's the annulus. So that's left over from the partial veil as it rips and opens. This is very thin and fragile. Often it's not even there. Often it just stays along the margin of the cap. If it is there, these will detach very easily. I'm not even sure that they are fully attached. And often you'll find this annulus, this ring, at the base of the stipe on the ground, just kind of lost and forgotten about. In terms of ecology, these are saprobic. They are terrestrial, and they are found primarily in grassy areas or along the margins of forests. And they're also very common some years in urban settings. You'll see them on lawns, and you'll see them on in parks, especially around areas, the margins where there might be trees in parks, where trees meet grass. They are very gregarious. They'll sometimes form rings or arcs, and other times you'll just see a field of them. Yum, yum, yum. And these are found late summer through fall. Very late summer, usually mid-August to early September. In terms of edibility, these are choice. These are one of the best tasting mushrooms out there. It is that deliquescence process that keeps these from being commercially viable, right? When they open up and they begin to open up, or they're big enough for you to pick and eat them, often they won't last longer than a day. You'll want to eat them that day. Or if you want to slow that process down, you can slow it down by maybe an additional day by putting them in ice cold water for an hour or so. Now, after the liquefaction occurs, these can still be used. Often people that you hear will say once they turn black, they're no good. They got to go. They are not toxic once they turn black. They're just fine. Often in places in Europe, people will take these, put them in like say a Ziploc bag and let them turn to black goo, and then add that to a tomato sauce to make kind of like a mushroomy pasta sauce or something similar, right? But they're by no means toxic. They just are gross. So these are for intermediate mushroom pickers. There is a lookalike, and we'll talk about that now. So this is Coprinus comatus on the left. That's our Shaggy Mane. and Chlorophyllum molybdites on the right. Chlorophyllum molybdites has earned the name the vomiter because it will make you very, very, very sick. So, if you were to hold Coprinus comatus in one hand and then the vomiter in the other, you would forever forth know the difference between the two, because the Shaggy Mane is much softer, and you can feel it's somewhat less substantial than the vomiter is. The vomiter is an agaric mushroom as well, and it will open up, and it doesn't deliquesce. It will be like a big full-fledged mushroom for quite a while. And there are some other differences. I would leave it to you to kind of look them up. Often you can tell just by cutting them in half to tell for sure. But once you're used to picking Shaggy Manes, then you're used to it. Next species, we're going to talk about the fairy ink cap. So this is Coprinellus disseminatus. Almost messed that one up there. Bit of a mouthful. This is a cute little mushroom. These are gray to tan in color. They're ovoid to convex, flattening out with age. They're pruinose, so that means that they have kind of like this bloom of fine white dust upon them. They're insubstantial. They are very little and very thin. They are striate to pleated, so pleated together and then opening up as they expand. And when they fully expand, they become torn. They're up to about 1 inch in diameter, so a very small mushroom. Here's a size reference for you. The gills are gray in color. They blacken with age. They are adnexed to free. So adnext means kind of dips down there, but it's really hard to see in a mushroom this small anyways. They are quite distant apart, and they have, I would consider this short gills present, as in there is one short gill between the regular gills, no more than that. And then they have a black spore print, as all of these mushrooms in this presentation do. So the stipe is translucent white to gray. They are cylindrical, as in they are the same width throughout. They are pruinose, so they have that kind of white bloom upon them as well, and they have a central attachment to the cap. You can see they're often curved there because they grow, again, off of decaying wood, often from the side, and then they curve upwards towards the light. And these are up to 1 inch high. They are saprobic, and they grow directly upon decaying wood. And these are found in massive clusters. Massive clusters. And that is why you can eat these. Otherwise, you know, if you only ever found one, you would just walk past it. These are found spring through fall, so throughout the year. And they taste pretty good. Like I said, they're insubstantial, but they occur by the hundreds, sometimes by the thousand. You're not going to find 5. You're going to find 500. And these are for intermediate mushroom pickers. So you can, if you got the patience to sit there and clip, you know, a couple hundred caps off, then you can take them home and add them to, say, an Alfredo sauce or to a risotto or something like that. And it will taste good. It'll taste like mushrooms, or you can use them as a garnish. They're very cute. And they don't deliquesce nearly as fast. And that's something too. You can keep them for a couple days. So, sorry, we'll go back to that. The next species here is the Mica Cap. This is Coprinellus micaceus. Same genus as the last one, but bigger. So these are beige or golden, and then they're paler towards the margin. You can see it's kind of turning a bit gray there at the margin. And that'll be the deliquescence beginning. And that color fades with age and turns gray-black. These are oval, again, ovaloid, and they expand to become kind of this bell shape, which is like convex but a little bit pointy at the top, and then they're nearly flat with deliquescence, but they never really get that far. Most of these mushrooms, long before they reach the full flatness, have melted away. They are pruinose, but this time they are pruinose not with a white powdery bloom, but with a reflective kind of mica-like grain. And you can kind of see them sparkling. It's almost like they're sparkling with dew or something. They're quite beautiful when young and not gooey. They have striate margins. And those, once again, like most of these mushrooms, they become tattered with deliquescence, and they are up to about 2 inches high, those caps. Here you can see a size reference. These are quite small ones. They do get bigger than that. So those gills are gray and they turn brown at maturity and then black at deliquescence. They become liquid, as the other ones do, but it takes significantly longer for these ones. These ones, it'll take about 3 to 4 days, and you can keep them in the fridge for a good while. They are free from the stipe, crowded. There are short gills present there if you really look hard, and they have a black spore print. So those stipes are off-white in color, finely prunose. I got that kind of bloom. You can even see it in the picture here. They are cylindrical. They have a central attachment to the cap, and they are stalk-like. So when I say stalk-like, I mean very similar to a dandelion, as in like you could take that stipe and twist it, and it shouldn't snap on you unless you like really twist it hard, fully around or something. Wrap it around your finger, that kind of thing should be okay to do. And they are hollow, and they're up to about 3 inches high. So these are saprobic mushrooms. They attach directly to decaying wood. And sometimes that wood will be underground, so it will appear that they're terrestrial, but if you look like a half inch, dig down a half inch, you'll find a hunk of wood that they're attached to. And these clump together in large numbers. Not as large as the fairy ink caps, but you could find several dozen clumped together, maybe even several hundred. And they're found spring through fall, so the year round. They taste pretty good. I would give them about the same quality as a button mushroom, though they aren't as substantial. They're not as thick. They're very thin-fleshed. They have a short shelf life, regardless of having longer than a Shaggy Mane. It's still relatively short, but you could slow that down by putting them in cold water, once again for intermediate mushroom pickers. This next species here is the alcoholic Inky Cap, and this is the Coprinopsis atrumentaria group. So why do I say group? Because what we're actually talking about is not necessarily Coprinopsis atrumentaria. We're actually talking about several, who knows how many species, that share the exact same macroscopic attributes that the species Coprinopsis atrumentaria has. So unless you're planning to test them genetically, there is no real reason to call them anything other than the alcoholic Inky Cap. So these are gray, darkening with age from the margin upwards, and you can see that happening here. The margin is turned a darker brown. These become black with deliquescence, and that is a rapid deliquescence. So it's not like the Mica Cap where it'll take a couple days. This could take maybe 2 days. And these are oval, again ovaloid, expanding to become bell-shaped, and then nearly flat, but then they just go all gooey before that happens. They are smooth to the touch. They don't have that prunose feel to them. They have a striate margin, and as they open up, once again, they become tattered because, again, it's disintegrating. And then these are up to about 2 inches high. And then here's a size reference for you. These gills are gray at first, and then they turn brown at maturity. You can see that happening there, and then black as they deliquesce. You can see that beginning of black as well at the margins there. They are free from the stipe, they are crowded, and they have a black spore print like all the mushrooms in this presentation do. The stipe, once again, is gray in color, cylindrical, has a central attachment. It's stalk-like. You could probably twist it around your finger. It is hollow, up to about 3 inches high. These are saprobic. Basically the same thing that you saw in the Mica Caps, just attaching to decaying wood or buried wood. Once again, clumping together in large numbers. The edibility, they are good. I'm giving them lower edibility than choice because of the fact that these ones do contain coprine. They are in the Coprinopsis genus. So as a result, if you drink alcohol, don't bother picking these. And to be fair, this isn't like a morel. You're not it's not worth changing your lifestyle over. Moving on to another, actually two species in Coprinopsis genus, and I'm just going to collectively call these the Scaly Inky Caps. I have found both of these here in Saskatchewan. One is Coprinopsis variegata on the left, one is Coprinopsis remagnesiana on the right. They have a slightly different look to them, but Scaly Inky Cap is a good description. So with Coprinopsis variegata, the main difference is that these are kind of gray or grayish brown. They're kind of a pale color. And Coprinopsis remagnesiana, which you see on the right-hand side there, is beige to orangish brown. These are oval, and they expand out again to become bell-shaped. But as they do, this kind of outer cuticle layer they have splits apart and becomes these upraised shaggy scales that cover most of the cap. The margin is smooth. It becomes tattered once again, or even striate with deliquescence, but that's concealed often by the scales on the cap. And they're up to about 2 inches high. You can see a size reference. You can see Coprinopsis remagnesiana on the left with the kind of more the reddish beige color, and then the grayish on the right hand for Coprinopsis variegata. Those gills, once again, gray, turning brown at maturity, then black, same as many of the species we've looked at here. And once again, they liquefy fairly quickly. They are free from the stipe, they are crowded, and they produce black spores. But doing a spore print of any of these mushrooms would be really hard because it would just be goo. So again, the stipe is gray in color for both. Cylindrical, has a central attachment. It is stalk-like. You can see on the right-hand side, that is Coprinopsis variegata, and it's a bit shaggy at the bottom. They're up to about 3 inches high. And we're going to look at the annulus, and this is only found in Coprinopsis remagnesiana here. And it's just a very, very faint brown sheathing ring that's detached, if anything at all. You can see it there further away. These are saprobic mushrooms, both of them. Here's a bit of a difference here. So with Coprinopsis remagnesiana, which you can see on the right there, these attach to just decaying wood, be it conifer or hardwood, and sometimes buried wood like you're seeing in this picture. However, Coprinopsis variegata attaches only to decaying hardwoods. And then these clump together in large numbers. Once again, they are found spring through fall. Here we go. This is the exact same thing that we saw with the alcoholic Inky Cap, so no need to go over it again. They are quite pretty though. You can see the Coprinopsis variegata there, attaching directly to decaying hardwood. And that is everything. I hope you enjoyed this presentation. This is the Mushroom Wizard, and I'll see you again next time.